All right, I'm just going to talk about a couple of different ways that we can group students in our classrooms. Thank you. So I guess the objective is just being able to use different grouping strategies, like identifying the different students that would maybe need a specified group or a specified place to sit in class. And some of this might be a refresher, or it might spark some new ideas for you to use later on in class. So a lot of the time when you say, let's do some group work, the kids automatically sit with their friends and they sit and talk majority of the time. So I'm hoping I can share some ideas that might help where maybe the kids are already placed into groups, or that they can have a little bit of flexibility where at least groups are changing. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is an expert group. This is essentially where the kids become experts on a specified topic. So you designate a group, and I will show a picture on the next slide, but each group becomes, like you were to give them a topic like, I don't know, maybe slopes of a line, or a section out of the chapter, or like the chapter out of the novel. So it holds students accountable because they have to present to the next group. And if they don't know what they're supposed to talk about, then they feel really unprepared and unprofessional. Responsive to student learning. So as they're working in their groups, we can walk around and say, oh, this kid's really not getting what I wanted them to get out of this, or this kid's knocking it out of the park. Maybe I should add in a couple other things for him to complete by the end of the week or whatever. It's pretty simple. They have to concentrate on one task at a time. So they have to learn the section, or they have to learn this concept out of the chapter. So they have to be like an expert. So kind of how it works is, we have relatively small classes in comparison to other schools. So maybe we just group them in 4s or 5s, or 3s, 4s, or 5s. So students would sit in groups of 3s, 4s, whatever. And ability level doesn't matter. So you could group your really high student with maybe one of the lower students in your class. And I know some of the classes might be a little bit more leveled, but even then, you have the kid that just excels and the kid that still kind of struggles. So it really wouldn't matter because they're working on the same topic, so they can kind of work off of each other, help each other out. So they have to become an expert, like I said, on that given topic. And then you would number the students in that specified group. So like, let's say I had 4 kids sitting over here. This group would get 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'd start again with this group, and there'd be a 1, 2, a 3, and a 4. And then those groups, all the number 1s would go meet in the back of the room. Number 2s would go meet over in that corner, whatever. And they'd have to present to their group on the topic that they were specified on, that they became the experts in. So, and again, that way, then you can walk around and say, oh, this kid really nailed this point and was able to present on this, finding the slope of a line, or finding the theme of the chapter, or whatever. Does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. You can always interrupt me if something doesn't make sense or you have a question. And this is just kind of a picture of what it looks like. Maybe you have A's, B's, C's, and D's, whatever. Calling a student an expert can boost their confidence. When you're in middle school and you become an expert on something, that's kind of a big deal. So especially when the teacher is calling you an expert, can go a long way with some kids. Okay, the next couple of things I'm going to look at are called like the jigsaw and the TPS, so think, pair, share strategies. A lot of you probably already use these quite often. A jigsaw, let's see, these allow time for students to kind of process individually, so gives them a minute or two to sit and really think about what you are asking them to do. And then it gives them peer confirmation because then they're working with a partner. And then the teacher's also saying, yeah, I really like that you can identify this, or yeah, but maybe we should expand on this topic. So again, I will show a picture on the next couple of slides. The jigsaw has 2 rounds, so you have kind of a focus group that goes into a task group. And then you have a think, pair, share, where you think as an individual, pair with a partner, and then like discuss with the class. So kind of a lot going on here, but focus group would be maybe you divide students into groups, and again, maybe they have to talk about a section or how to do this specific, like find the coordinates or whatever, or they have to find the central idea of the text. And so they do that as a group, they're working on that, and maybe each of the 4 groups is working on something different. So it's very similar to kind of the expert groups, and then they have to come back and they teach the other group about what they learned, and then maybe the whole class comes together and talks about this, or a little bit more specifically in this one, when they come together, maybe they're given a task. So each of the 4 people that learned something else has to come together now and make a presentation on the chapter, or they have to come together to work through a checklist together, or they have to come together and work through like a novel project together. So like now that they've been able to find, one person found the theme, one person found the setting, one person, did the history or like what this person did, they can now make one project together. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I feel like it's really hot in here. Think Fair Share, again, you probably heard this one all the time, you probably do it pretty often. You ask a question or you ask some kind of thought-provoking idea. You let the students sit and think for a few moments. Allowing the students to have time to respond is a really big thing that I see with my students. I want to just like rush through all these things, and then I realize that I didn't give them enough time to even respond to what I asked them to do. So, even allowing, like setting a timer on your watch or on your phone that says, hey, you get 30 seconds to just come up with some kind of idea, whether it's very simple, like, I think it's great, that allows them to formulate something. And then they get to pair with maybe somebody sitting next to them or behind them or wherever they're seated in the classroom. And they kind of bounce ideas off of each other. So maybe this person thought, well, this is great, or I think this is stupid, and why they thought it was cool or why they thought it was stupid. And then they share it either with like a group sitting next to them, or they can share it with the class, and then you have like a class discussion. So you can go a couple different ways with this. Any questions? So, okay, I'm going to go into kind of how you can set up a couple different ways of the classroom. So mine obviously is rather small, and I don't have too many students, so I don't have too many desks in here, but that's the nature of the beast. I guarantee you can think of at least a student in every class period that cannot seem to pay attention for more than like 30 seconds. And I guarantee it's always going to be the kid with ADD or ADHD, or you think has it, but that's okay. Like you noticed earlier, my wall is now yellow. Having something that's visual, but clean and apparent is excellent for really any student. Having enough to look around at that is going to stimulate them, but it's not going to be overwhelming. And that's with any human being. You walk into a new building or something, and if there's too much going on, you're like, oh my gosh, what is happening? But then if you come in and there's nothing to look at, of course you're going to get bored and try and do something with yourself. So having it clean, having something to look at, desk placement, I'll go into that a little bit more, but just kind of based on what the student needs, can depend on where you sit them in class. And desk placement also can be different too, because like you have tables where you have desks, and I think yours is in rows and yours is kind of in pods. So it can depend how your classroom is set up, can depend on where your student may sit. Alright, so some simple steps is like some flexible seating, maybe like a therapy ball, or like, I know some of the kids have sat like in wobble cushions, you know what those are. I don't have any up here, but I know you've used them in the past. They're just like almost blow up half ball kind of things. So you can sit
like a little bit bigger than a whoopee cushion, but
yes.
They don't make the noise.
Right. And they're just enough that you can put in like any kind of seat, and the student can sit on it, so it's more of like a sensory thing, but then they can move around the seat. And so it helps them pay more attention, or even having like a tennis ball to move around with their foot, or some kind of thing that's not going to be super obnoxious, but enough that they can move slightly. Visually appealing, again, kind of with like having enough there. I have both reading and math things up because I teach reading and math, but I know a lot of you have this already. You have some up on the walls that they can simply like stare at for a long period of time if they needed to, or whatnot. So a few of those students that you can probably think of that have that attention deficit issue, seated near the teacher is always going to be the best place. And you've heard that time and time again, I'm sure, that seated near the teacher is always the best. That can always be really tricky because seated near the teacher for some of my kids might be right here. And a couple of my kids have hearing issues, where if I'm standing right in front of the window, they can't read my lips because I have glares coming in from behind me. So that can get really tricky, but I mean, maybe you set them, like I have this desk up here, maybe you have one desk that just sits right next to you. I know that can be awkward, but if that kid's gonna pay attention and get his work done, or her work done, might be worth the time, even if it's just one day a week or something. I use this almost every day because I have one kid that just can't. Keeping the doors closed if you can sometimes helps with, like, if people are walking by. I know up here Chromebook carts get passed around pretty often, and those can get pretty loud, or people are going back and forth from the library, or they're going to kids' room to use the computers, or we're going down to the gym, or going to lunch because I have A lunch and most of the people up here have B lunch. So not having or even having the curtain pulled at certain times of the day when there's going to be a lot of traffic can be really beneficial for some students, because then they're not staring at the door waiting for somebody to come in, or watching everybody walk by, because that's more exciting than what listening to and reading or whatever is being taught at the time. Even sitting the student by themselves. So that's why, again, having the student sit out by themselves, and I know you do that with testing, right? Which is excellent. I mean, there's a few kids I can think of that I won't name out loud right now that would probably do well if they just sat by themselves the entire time. You know what I mean? And you probably have those kids in every class, and if you can even isolate them on a day that you need them to understand some things, maybe you're going over a section and you're like, this has to be remembered. Then you maybe have the desk that sits up in the corner right by you, and then there's nobody in the 3 seats that surround it if possible. That's really hard for some kids, especially for kids who have broken arms or, just everything not in their corner. So you kind of have to have somebody there to help them. But yeah, that's, just a few things you can do. Go to the next slide. These are a couple of seating charts that you could use. So if you have, like I have tables, and you have tables, or maybe you could rearrange these from time to time instead of having like a circle, where a seating chart, you get my thoughts collected here, a seating chart can make all the difference for some kids. They walk into your class and this is their seat, and nobody's going to take it because it's theirs. Their name's not on it, but they're going to sit in that seat no matter what. And you can probably figure out who those kids are after a few weeks, because they'll probably get really nervous when somebody's in that seat and they don't know where to go from there. Let them choose for maybe the first week or two of class. Let them pick wherever they want to sit, because that's how you're going to figure out who the kid is that won't stop talking, or who the kid is that just sits and stares at everything but you. Or, the unmotivated kid, or the disruptive kid that is, throwing things out the window, or, is getting things in and out of their binder all the time, and has stuff everywhere all the time. Or just has those ADD, ADHD tendencies where they're just fidgeting all the time, or poking the bear of the student sitting next to them. Again, you probably have those talkative students. Always sit them elsewhere in the room. I guess not always, because sometimes they can work really well together if they're given them enough motivation. The ADHD, ADD tendency students, again, kind of always sit them in the front and the center, because that's normally where you're going to be, is front and center. I tend to walk a lot, so sometimes it's helpful for them to mix up from time to time. But if you know that your desk is up at the front, and that's going to help them because you're probably going to come back to your desk multiple times throughout the class period, that would be really helpful too. The disruptive student is always kind of on one end of the classroom, one, towards the front door. So maybe I would set somebody up here So that way they're the farthest away from all the other students. They can't get to everybody that direction. So this is just a couple different layouts you can look at. And this is a few things to notice, that the ADD unmotivated students are kind of always up front or always like seated near the teacher, so that you can constantly maybe be tapping in front of their desk, or that you can stand right in front of them and teach the lesson or teach part of something, so that you know that they're having to look right at you the whole time. Talkative students are not necessarily always on opposite corners. People tend to say, okay, you two seem to be buddy-buddy, so you that corner, you this far corner up here. Really just even having a couple desk spaces away from them, because they're going to be the kids that still talk to the person sitting next to them. But at least they're not sitting next to the person they are most comfortable with. The disruptive student. Again, I kind of said this already, is pretty much a good spot for them to just be up in the front corner, one of the two front corners. You're going to get to the corner at some point, so knowing that that student is sitting in this far corner, you know that you can stop in this corner as often as possible, because that's going to be the kid that you want to say, okay, you're doing a great job, or hey, moving on to the next point. Any questions so far? Excellent. Okay, this is going to be probably one of the last few things. This is just if you use Google Classroom, if you think we're going to have to start using it in the future with these like cold days where you have to assign lessons on there, you can actually assign group work on here. So if you ever assign homework on Google Classroom, it's pretty easy. So I'm just going to use my classroom as an example. This is how your page would look if you had one. You can go into classwork, you can hit create. I don't use mine as often as I should, so there's really not much there. You can click any of these, so you can give an assignment, you can give a quiz, a question, you can post materials, you can reuse a post if you've had Google Classroom for multiple years, or you can just give like a topic of, discuss this with your neighbor or whatever. If I want to post an assignment, I can give the title, I can attach whatever I need, I can attach a YouTube video, a document, a Word doc, whatever. But instead of marking all the students, I would unclick all students and just go through and pick the students I want to be in that group. So like, let's say I wanted, this student and this student to work together. Select those two students, and those two students would get that document that I shared. So like only those two students would be able to open that document. Yes, you do have to go in and post like a couple different things for all the groups, but only those two people, so when they log into the classroom, that's what they see, is that they're working with that student and they're completing that assignment. So that's going to be a little bit more effective when you're actually in school, but again, maybe you assign group work where, 3 or 4 people have to complete one worksheet. If they have to go in and answer the set questions, instead of just saying, okay, everybody go in and complete the worksheet or complete the Google slide, or maybe you have a Google template on there of slides where each person has to complete a couple of slides that have questions on them. But instead of having just one person do all the work, you can share and have it as a group project. Do you have questions? Anyone have questions on that?
That's something I need to do though, is get more on the actual assignment portion of it, because I feel like now I just mainly update with like slides and notes and stuff, but I don't actually.
Let's see, I think I could like attach a Google slide in here and see if I don't need this one. Okay, so I can just like use this one, and I could add. I need to play around with this more, but you can like make a copy for each student. So like each student would then have their own copy of this PowerPoint. So they can go in and make edits.
Oh, okay.
So
And
like,
then it wouldn't screw yours up then.
right. So
But
like
if
they
you
would
just
have,
said, if you said student can edit it, it would.
right, so if I had just like students can edit file, like all the students can go in and edit one file. Whereas then if I have just a student can view the file, they can just open it and look through it like you wanted them to look at notes or something. And then this bottom one would be each student makes a copy and it puts their name in it creates the.
Like Corey's copy or something.
Yeah,
like
it
that.
says John Doe's copy of this, or it says the name of the title and then the person's name. And then you can add whatever, you can put a due date, you can add topics, you can give it points, so you can go into grades stuff on Google Classroom. I just thought that was kind of a cool aspect if you ever wanted to use it, that you can have all the students do it or assign 2 specific students to complete the set task.
So is this where, like, I don't use Google Classroom, but is this where I would have like an 8th grade group and a 7th grade group? So then I could click all students for 8th grade.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have 4 different classes,
Yeah,
because
so
I have
like-
4 different, like, 4 different.
I don't have, these aren't all mine, but like, this would be Lindsay's, like, 1 8th grade class. Or like, I think it might be all of your 8th grade stuff.
It's 2 class periods, so
Okay.
that's my traditional 8th grade math, and then I have my self-paced. And I think some teachers have, like, he has 6
Like,
more,
this would be
so
like-
it's for every class period versus every type of class.
Right.
And
See, and I do mine per class, just for the fact, if we talked about something in this hour, but we didn't get to it the next one, then it would be.
Right.
But like when you go make an assignment, you can say, I want this, this, and this. So it's really easy if you do a different class period for everyone to like, even if you want it for all of your classes, you just check the box and it goes to everybody.
Oh, so I wouldn't
Right.
have to open each one.
Right.
So it's kind of like Skyward in that way. Like
Okay.
when you make an
Yeah.
assignment, you can
Oh,
do
You can
it
like
Okay.
click
for-
all the different classes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
So it's,
So like, these are all like, these could potentially be all of my classes. They're not. I'm in them just so I can see what people post, so I can tell my kids to do the work. But yeah, like I could have 3 different sections of math. I have 6th, 7th, 8th grade math, and my 6th grade reading, whatever. But then within that group, so this is just my 5th hour class, I can assign individual groups in that certain class.
I love that announcement. If yours magically goes missing.
What?
I love your announcement where if it magically goes missing, here you go.
Yeah.
That happens a lot, I'm sure.
It does. Surprisingly, not as often in here, but that's because I don't really send a whole lot of stuff home. A lot of it, like, stays in the binders in the back, but, yeah. Are there any other questions? Okay, I hope I was somewhat clear on a lot of this. Let's go back to this. I think I had maybe 1 or 2 other slides. This is just a statistic that I thought was interesting that, as of July, like this recent July over the summer, 107.8 million people that aren't like farm people work in private service provider industry. So basically they have to work with other people to get the job done, which is 70%. So that means 14, if we have 20 students in a class period, 14 of those 20 students will work in a group setting when they leave from college or high school. And this was just kind of an interesting thing that the other 30% are all self-employed or hired by a self-employed person. So, I don't know, you can do what you want with that. I just figured it was kind of interesting to share that group work and grouping strategically is important. And because even as teachers have to work together to get things done for students. So, being able to work with others, obviously, we all know is pretty important. This is just a tip that I like to use sometimes, is like changing it up from maybe quarter to quarter or throughout the school year. Like maybe you go with, first quarter we're gonna sit at the tables that we're at now, and then, the second quarter you change your room around and also make the students change. So not only am I, gonna move these tables to the back of the room and move this up here, like some kids have to move to the back and other kids have to stay up here instead of here. Or, again, you could keep it the way you have it, not a big deal, but maybe move it around from time to time so the kids aren't in the same grind all the time. Can't tell you how to do what you want to do, but just some recommendations if you can. Just a quick note, we can't change students' fundamental, we all know that, but thanks for being awesome and being teachers. So these are all the sources, thank you for coming. These are all the sources I used. Again, I will send this out if you want to look at any of the articles, to read anything more about it.